everybody. Today I wanted to talk about the moral mind and the differences between conservatives and liberals. This is Jonathan Haidt, and in this video I want to go over a key point that he makes.
So why is this important? Why are we talking about this? Well, I wanted to shed some light on why conservatives might vote the way they vote and why liberals vote the way they vote.
Let's get into it.
When the liberal team loses, as it did in 2004 and as it almost did in 2000, we comfort ourselves. We try to explain why half of America voted for the other team. We think they must be blinded by religion or by simple stupidity. So if you think that half of America votes Republican because they are blinded in this way, then my message to you is that you're trapped in a moral matrix, in a particular moral matrix. And by the matrix, I mean literally the matrix, like the movie The Matrix. But I'm here today to give you a choice. You can either take the blue pill and stick to your comforting delusions, or you can take the red pill, learn some moral psychology, and step outside the moral matrix.
Okay, awesome. Let's take the red pill, see what he has to say.
Your research in the book, and you and your associates, organizes morality into six moral foundations or concerns. Sketch them briefly and tell me how liberals and conservatives differ on each of them.
Sure. So if you imagine each of our righteous minds as being like an audio equalizer with 6 slider switches, and the first one is care, compassion, those sorts of issues. Liberals have it turned up to 11, and we have this on a lot of different surveys. Liberals really feel when they see an animal being mistreated, they're more likely to feel something than conservatives, and especially than libertarians, who are very, very low on this one. The next two, liberty and fairness, when liberty and fairness conflict with care, are you going to punish someone, or are you going to be compassionate? Liberals are more likely to go with care. In other words, care trumps liberty and fairness, even though everybody cares about all three of those. The next three, loyalty, authority, and sanctity, what we find across many questionnaires, many surveys, and analyses of texts and sermons, all sorts of things, is that liberals don't talk a lot about loyalty, group loyalty. They don't talk a lot about authority and the importance of order and authority in maintaining order. They don't talk a lot about sanctity. Conservatives, on the other hand, what we find is that they value all of these more or less equally. And I think this is part of the reason why conservatives have done a much better job of connecting with American morality and convincing people that they are the party of moral value.
So conservatives seem to have a much better understanding of morality. They seem to use a 5-channel basis, or liberals seem to use only a 2-channel basis. This gives conservatives a leg up in understanding human nature and traditions and history, and this gives them an advantage when they govern or create policies.
Here's another explanation of it.
On the left, I've plotted the scores for liberals. On the right, those for conservatives. In the middle, the moderates. The blue line shows you people's responses on the average of all the harm questions. So as you see, people care about harm and care issues. They give high endorsement of these sorts of statements all across the board. But as you also see, liberals care about it a little more than conservatives. The line slopes down. Same story for fairness. But look at the other 3 lines. For liberals, the scores are very low. Liberals are basically saying, no, this is not morality. In-group authority, this stuff has nothing to do with morality. I reject it. But as people get more conservative, the values rise. We could say that liberals have a kind of a 2-channel or 2-foundation morality. Conservatives have more of a 5-foundation or 5-channel morality. We find this in every country we look at. Here's the data for 1,100 Canadians. I'll just flip through a few other slides. The UK, Australia, New Zealand, Western Europe, Eastern Europe, Latin America, the Middle East, the East Asia, and South Asia. Notice also that on all of these graphs, the slope is steeper on in-group authority purity, which shows that within any country, the disagreement isn't over harm and fairness. We debate over what's fair, but everybody agrees that harm and fairness matter. Moral arguments within cultures are especially about issues of in-group authority purity. This effect is so robust that we find it no matter how we ask the question. In one recent study, we asked people to suppose you're about to get a dog, you picked a particular breed, you learned some new information about the breed. Suppose you learn that this particular breed is independent-minded and relates to its owner as a friend and an equal. Well, if you're a liberal, you say, hey, that's great, because liberals like to say, fetch, please. But if you're conservative, that's not so attractive. If you're conservative and you learn that a dog is extremely loyal to its home and family and doesn't warm up quickly to strangers, for conservative, well, loyalty is good. Dogs ought to be loyal. But to a liberal, it sounds like this dog is running for the Republican nomination. So you might say, okay, there are these differences between liberals and conservatives, but what makes those three other foundations moral? Aren't those just the foundations of xenophobia and authoritarianism and Puritanism? What makes them moral? The answer, I think, is contained in this incredible triptych from Hieronymus Bosch, The Garden of Earthly Delights. In the first panel, we see the moment of creation. All is ordered, all is beautiful, all the people and animals are doing what they're supposed to be doing, where they're supposed to be. But then, given the way of the world, things change. We get every person doing whatever he wants with every aperture of every other person and every other animal. Some of you might recognize this as the 60s. But the 60s inevitably gives way to the 70s, where the cuttings of the apertures hurt a little bit more. Of course, Bosch called this hell. So this triptych, these three panels, portray the timeless truth that order tends to decay, the truth of social entropy. But lest you think this is just some part of the Christian imagination where Christians have this weird problem with pleasure, here's the same story, the same progression, told in a paper that was published in Nature a few years ago, in which Ernst Fehr and Simon Gachter had people play a commons dilemma, a game in which you give people money, and then on each round of the game, they can put money into a common pot, and then the experimenter doubles what's in there, and then it's all divided among the players. So it's a really nice analog for all sorts of environmental issues, where we're asking people to make a sacrifice, and they themselves don't really benefit from their own sacrifice, but you really want everybody else to sacrifice, but everybody has a temptation to free ride. And what happens is that at first people start off reasonably cooperative, and this is all played anonymously. On the first round, people give about half of the money that they can, but they quickly see, you know what, other people aren't doing so much, so I don't want to be a sucker, I'm not going to cooperate, and so cooperation quickly decays from reasonably good down to close to zero. But then, and here's the trick, Fehr and Gachter said on the seventh round, they told people, you know what, new rule, if you want to give some of your own money to punish people who aren't contributing, you can do that. And as soon as people heard about the punishment issue going on, cooperation shoots up. It shoots up and it keeps going up. There's a lot of research showing that to solve cooperative problems, it really helps. It's not enough to just appeal to people's good motives. It really helps to have some sort of punishment, even if it's just shame or embarrassment or gossip. You need some sort of punishment to bring people, when they're in large groups, to cooperate. There's even some recent research suggesting that religion, priming God, making people think about God, often in some situations leads to more cooperative, more pro-social behavior. So liberals speak for the weak and oppressed. They want change and justice, even at the risk of chaos. As this guy's shirt says, stop bitching, start a revolution. If you're high on openness to experience, revolution is good, it's change, it's fun. Conservatives, on the other hand, speak for institutions and traditions. They want order, even at some cost, to those at the bottom. The great conservative insight is that order is really hard to achieve, it's really precious, and it's really easy to lose. So as Edmund Burke said, the restraints on men, as well as their liberties, are to be reckoned among their rights. This was after the chaos of the French Revolution. So once you see this, once you see that liberals and conservatives both have something to contribute, that they form a balance on change versus stability, then I think the way is open to step outside the moral matrix. This is the great insight that all the Asian religions have attained. Think about yin and yang. Yin and yang aren't enemies. Yin and yang don't hate each other. Yin and yang are both necessary, like night and day, for the functioning of the world. You find the same thing in Hinduism. There are many high gods in Hinduism. Two of them are Vishnu, the preserver, Shiva, the destroyer. This image actually is both of those gods sharing the same body. You have the markings of Vishnu on the left, so we could think of Vishnu as the conservative god. You have the markings of Shiva on the right. Shiva is the liberal god, and they work together. You find the same thing in Buddhism.
What he's saying here is conservatives and liberals actually need each other. They serve a yin and yang type of a relationship, and that this has been going on forever, basically. This is found in ancient religions, and now we see it in politics today on the Democrat and Republican parties. If left to their own devices, I believe liberals would find a way to destroy themselves. And I think if left to their own devices, conservatives would have a much sustainable or much more sustainable view of the world and better way to govern overall. My point is that liberals need conservatives just a little bit more than conservatives need liberals. I've made my point. It's time for you to make yours in the comments below. And if you like this video, smash that like button, hit that subscribe button, and share it with a friend. Thanks. Peace.